Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something pretty fascinating, what our sources call an unconventional classroom. Picture this. A 12th grade English teacher, right here in LA, deciding, not to go with the usual classics.
Right.
Instead, they used Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, her novels, as the core text for American Lit.
Yeah, and that's huge. The significance, Butler was a black woman, a visionary from Pasadena, right?
I do.
And she wrote this near future that felt like it was, baked into the city's DNA.
Totally. Challenging all those old ideas about belonging, the American dream, all of it.
Exactly. And the source we looked at said it wasn't just reading, it was a practice of recognition.
A practice of recognition. I like that.
Yeah, linking the book straight to what was happening outside. A reckoning, not some dusty old story.
And that's really what we want to dig into today. This kind of call and response between Butler's words from, 93?
1993, yeah.
And what we're actually seeing in Los Angeles right now. That teacher apparently wanted to show kids literature could, explain their world better than any politician.
More honesty, for sure. And even offered tools for survival. Survival as practice was the phrase used.
But here's the kicker. Right?
Yeah, the sad part.
Her work isn't on the syllabus anymore. They went back to, quote, safer authors.
More canonical. But the connection between her vision and, now, it hasn't faded. If anything, it's sharper.
Definitely. So for you listening, this deep dive is maybe a different way to see how an imagined future can become, real life.
Piece by piece.
And what that means for understanding your world wherever you are. Okay, let's start with the environment.
Okay.
Butler wrote, people have changed the climate of the world. Now the climate is changing them. That second part. How is the climate changing people here right now?
Oh, it's everywhere. It's not subtle. Our sources talk about summers with skies just thick with wildfire ash.
We've all seen that.
Right. Kids needing masks just to breathe outside. Not even for viruses anymore, just the air quality.
Can't play outside.
Exactly. And basic things like water fountains, many marked not safe to drink.
Wow.
What Butler nailed wasn't just that climate change and inequality are linked, but how the burden shifts.
How so?
Well, while everyday people deal with the ash and bad water, the sources point to, billionaire compounds digging their own underground reservoirs.
Seriously, their own water supply.
Yeah, securing their own water. So clean air, drinkable water. They're becoming luxuries. It's creating this stark class divide, just like the walled cities she wrote about.
So the changing climate is literally redrawing the lines of who gets basic needs met. Which leads right into our next point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The physical divisions.
It does.
Segment 2, Butler wrote, there is no food, no safety outside the walls. The streets are a gauntlet. A gauntlet. That's intense.
And it feels disturbingly real in LA today, those walls she mentioned. You see echoes in the encampments along the freeways.
The tents, yeah.
Communities constantly facing these police sweeps at dawn, which isn't just an inconvenience, it's traumatic.
I can only imagine.
And the articles mention, Governor Newsom might show up for a photo op.
Right.
But the reality is, unhoused students worry these sweeps mean exposure to ICE if they're undocumented.
No safety's just gone.
Pretty much. Meanwhile, places like Beverly Hills, Hancock Park, they're getting more fortified.
More walls, literal and figurative.
Exactly. And private security is booming. One source mentioned off-duty LAPD officers launching an app.
An app? For what?
For the wealthy to basically order protection like takeout.
You're kidding. A private army paid for by public training.
Essentially. So you have private patrols in Hancock Park, while maybe ICE is raiding MacArthur Park with armored carriers.
That's stark.
And you see the glowing downtown towers while families are sleeping in cars nearby. The contrast is just brutal.
So what does that do to the idea of a shared city? Shared safety. It really makes you ask who the city is actually for.
It shreds it, basically. Safety becomes something you buy. Public space isn't universal anymore.
A gauntlet for some, sanctuary for others.
Yeah. Just like Butler wrote, it affects everything, getting around, getting resources, just feeling like you belong.
And if public space isn't safe and safety is privatized, what about the police themselves? This ties into segment 3. Butler's skepticism was sharp. The police take what you give them and still do nothing.
And that hits hard today, thinking about trust.
He's broken.
The sources suggest it's deeply fractured. I mean, the city's paying out record sums in lawsuits over police violence, people maimed.
Record sums.
Yeah, and body cams, introduced for transparency. The articles say they've often proven hollow. Footage gets locked away unless the chief says, okay.
So much for accountability.
Right. And there's another disturbing layer one source highlighted. Reports of officers assaulting their own partners are hitting record highs.
Wow. Violence at home, mirroring violence on the street.
It's a deeply troubling picture. When trust erodes that badly, the whole foundation of community safety just crumbles. People feel less safe, not more.
That's bleak. And this lack of trust, this breakdown, it connects to the economy too, doesn't it? Butler's idea in segment 4. Company towns return, work, eat, live at the pleasure of the rich, feels almost archaic.
But it's back, just in a modern disguise. Our sources really lay this out. Think about Amazon warehouses just swallowing the inland empire.
East of LA, yeah. Huge warehouses.
Huge. And the conditions reported? Grueling. One source mentioned the whole piss jugs thing.
Oh, dehumanizing.
Totally. Then you've got gig drivers, running themselves ragged for algorithmic crumbs. The app is the boss.
No security, no benefits.
None. And students taking on massive debt, locking them into jobs just to pay it off. Debt bondage, basically.
It's all driven by these killer apps, the sources call them.
Yeah, these dominant platforms that crush competition and set the terms. It leads to exhaustion for most people and just endless growth for a tiny few. It's the company town, just digital and maybe more insidious.
So for you listening, how does this change what work even means? Or ownership. It feels like you don't own your labor anymore.
Exactly. The power is shifted completely. You're participating in a system dictated by an algorithm, by a platform. The whole social contract around work feels broken.
Which leads to a kind of despair.
Oh.
That brings us to segment 5. Butler wrote, "There is a drug that makes people love the fire." Sounds metaphorical.
It is, but it connects to literal things, too. I mean, obviously, the fentanyl crisis is devastatingly real in LA's alleys, a symptom of deep despair.
Tragic.
But the source suggested it's also about this, societal addiction to spectacle, to collapse.
Also.
Think about the viral clips burning cars, chaos constantly replayed. It's almost entertainment, the high of collapse.
While real problems mount up.
Exactly. Record unemployment in parts of the city. Inflation eating away at everyone's budget. The source mentioned even things like Nintendo Switch games becoming unaffordable for families.
Just out of reach.
Yeah. And there's this feeling, one article called it the lie that the system still holds, even when economic reality feels different. It even cited reports about past administrations and manipulating economic data with AI.
So the drug is the distraction. The spectacle keeps us from seeing the real issues.
That's the argument. We get addicted to the fire, the chaos, and ignore the systemic problems driving it all. We sort of fixate on the sensational.
Watching the house burn and calling it a show, which is maybe the perfect segue to segment 6, the politics. That slogan.
Oh, yeah.
Butler's fictional president for 2030. The slogan, "Make America Great Again."
Chilling, right? How early it arrived. Decades before her timeline.
Decades early, and now it's everywhere.
Stitched onto those red hats that blaze like warning signals, as one article put it.
Vivid image.
And in its wake, sources see this rise in Christian nationalism, described as baptizing cruelty as faith.
Strong words.
Very. And then there's the symbolism. One piece mentions seeing the Tesla Cybertruck.
Oh, that thing?
Yeah. Described as best birth control on wheels, a metal joke on wheels, the future wrapped in steel and self-parody. A very critical take on what it represents.
So Butler didn't just predict trends. She predicted the actual language, the symbols. It's uncanny.
It really is. Her understanding of the cultural currents was just incredibly deep.
Okay, segment 7 delves deeper into that intersection of faith and power. Butler wrote, "They call suffering holy. They call obedience godly." That's deeply cynical about moral authority.
It is. And our sources connect it directly to what they see happening now. They talk about today's zealots who, in their view, legislate hunger, ban care, deport laborers.
And justify it how?
Crowning each cruelty with scripture. That's the quote. Twisting faith to serve harsh policies.
And locally, what about LA leadership?
The sources were pretty scathing about LA Democrats, too, talking about crocodile tears, but ultimately doing nothing significant when they had power.
Why nothing?
Too compromised, maybe. Too tied to donors. One source even mentioned being too silent even to condemn genocide abroad.
Wow. Strong critique.
Yeah. And even institutions like LAUSD, the school district, seen as bowing to a rogue Supreme Court in that Mahmoud v. Taylor case.
Surrendering kids' rights.
That was the interpretation, giving up without a fight. It all seems to point back to Butler's idea. Righteousness gets defined not by justice, but by obedience to power, or the system.
The moral compass just spun completely around. But amidst all this darkness, Butler did offer a path forward. Earthseed. Segment 8.
Yes, agency.
All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. There's hope in that, right? Action.
Definitely. And you see it here. Our sources find hope in the mutual aid groups, people feeding their unhoused neighbor.
Grassroots stuff.
Tenant unions fighting evictions. Students actually using Butler's books like a map for survival, finding ways to navigate.
Real resilient.
But it exists alongside this very different reality. The state response.
Which is?
Well, articles mention police blocking streets for the National Guard, even Marines rolling into downtown.
Not bringing aid, though.
Not aid, no. Arriving like occupiers is how one source put it. A military feel in a civilian space.
So the presence lingers even if troops aren't always visible.
Yeah, militarism lingers like smog. You see news clips? Helicopters lowering supplies, but into fenced-off state fortresses, while the city itself struggles. Resources going to fortification, not people.
It's a stark contrast.
Yeah.
So for you listening, where does that leave us? Where does real change come from? Community action versus this institutional power? Where's your agency?
It really feels like the change bubbles up from below, you know? Community efforts. That's Earthseed in action. Engaging, changing, being changed, building resilience together.
So wrapping this up, L.A., the city Butler, imagined in flames. It feels like so much of her prophecy is now just fact, lived experience.
It does. The sources agree. The city isn't run for the many. It's run by and for the property developer oligarchs, the concrete barons. Land isn't home, it's yield, profit.
And that idea you mentioned earlier, predation never leaves, it only changes shape.
You see it so clearly. The West Side's glittering, Silicon Beach, venture capital, tech dreams.
Right.
Then the East Side, sprawling encampments, vans, RVs. One article called them miles of rented steel coffins leased out by distant van lords.
Van lords, a new name for an old kind of exploitation. It's brutal.
It is, and it's personal. These aren't abstract issues.
It's home.
For sure. Like, the sources echo experiences I recognize. An apartment I had back in 2010 for $1,600. Now it's pushing $5,000.
Unbelievable.
My old rural mortgage, $900. Same place is nearly 3 times that now. On paper, maybe I look okay, wealthy even.
Right.
But I know if I sell, I'm done. I'll never own again here.
And that's the reality for so many.
So many. And the sources point out, your kids, listener, they inherit the air, the ash, the unaffordability. But that promise of owning a home, that door feels sealed shut for a whole generation. It's sealed for so many right now.
Butler wrote it as parable, a teacher taught it as literature, and now, well, we live it as facts.
Yeah.
So the question for you, listening, is, what does it mean when the imagined future is just your Tuesday? How do we use these stories, these warnings like those students did, not just as fiction, but as a mirror, as a tool to understand and maybe, just maybe, shape our own future in our own cities? Something to think about.